Tailscale, the thing we are talking about. In the docs, you can find a Kubernetes operator. Let's set it up. For the demo, I would just use a kind cluster. So normally on a MacBook, when you use Docker, you can't really access directly the things running in Docker because Docker for desktop on a Mac is basically a Linux VM, and you don't have a direct network connectivity between your host and your VM and the containers running in that VM. Tailscale is a potential solution, one of many. You can do port forwarding, you can do Metal LB, you can do some other things. But it is a way to easily access things running inside your Kubernetes cluster or just inside Docker on a VM inside your MacBook, and potentially access it from many other places. And the concepts are the same. It's really like I use this exactly the same manifest to set up this connectivity with Kind that I use for my GKE cluster. Since I work on RabbitMQ, that's my use case. For those who don't know, we used to work together on RabbitMQ.
Yeah.
So I also use the RabbitMQ operator to easily deploy RabbitMQ. And here I have a simple manifest to deploy a Rabbit cluster. But before I can do that, I need to deploy the operator, which is basically the kubectl apply. Check that it is now running. And now if I apply this manifest, in a moment I should have a RabbitMQ node running here. So far, nothing to do with Tailscale, right? It's just my use case for later adding Tailscale. So in a moment we have a Rabbit cluster. I have one more step that is related to Rabbit. It's just to set up a user so that it's easier to log in later. So if the Rabbit is running,
running,
I would just create an account with simple username and password. For those who use Rabbit and they expect guests to always be there, when you deploy it with an operator, you get a generated username and password by default. So I just added the guest user that you kind of expect to have. All right, so I have a Rabbit running in my kind cluster. Now, if you read through the Kubernetes operator Tailscale, Kubernetes operator dot, there are a few installation options like a Helm chart. Personally, I just follow the static manifest file because honestly, it's just the easiest. You basically grab a file, I have a link for here, and you set up two things, a client ID and a client secret. I already have that file. You need to trust me that what I have in my tailscale.yaml is exactly that file with these two values. I just don't want to share them on screen. But that's all I did, honestly. So now if I do...
Yep. By the way, I want to mention something. In Tailscale, you could set up a client secret that is single use.
Right, actually, yeah, that's true.
Which means that I know that like for convenience, you're just like reusing it, the same one that maybe expires sometimes in the future, and you can use it more than once. I think they're called like multi-use secrets, but you can also do one-offs. And whenever I screen share, I always use single-use secrets.
Cool. All right. Before I apply that manifest, actually, let's go to my Tailscale console. As you can see, I currently have four devices on my VPN, Tailscale VPN network. My MacBook that I'm working on, that's Tailscale operator running in GKE, and two things that I expose from the GKE cluster like that. But we can just ignore them for now. I didn't want to delete them really because I would need to really delete them because otherwise they reappear because they're running there. So they are here, but we can basically ignore. Only this MacBook will be actually here. So now if I deploy the Tailscale manifest, if we check the Tailscale namespace, okay, it's running. I guess if we stay on the page, it will appear in a moment, but I can just refresh and it's here. You can see the Linux kit, which is a hint that this is running in Docker. So that's it, a static manifest with two secrets, basically, and we have the operator running. Now, I want to access my Rabbit cluster. Now that I have Tailscale operator, it should be easy. So as I mentioned before, there are two ways. Probably the simplest way is to add an annotation to a service. And then the Tailscale operator will basically discover that this annotation is there and will expose that service just because it has the annotation. And I guess let's try that. So if I edit the, so my Rabbit is called RMQ, and because of that, I have two services. One is just called RMQ, and that's the one that I care about. So let's edit that manifest annotations. The important bit is to put true in quotes.
Yeah, double quotes. This is YAML. Remember that. Very important.
All right.
Cool. Tailscale.com/expose.
True.
Set to true as a string.
And that's it.
Okay.
Now,
nice.
If I refresh this page, hopefully,
so we have 5 machines.
Very soon. There it is. Default RMQ. Default because it's in the default namespace in my Kubernetes cluster.
Now, that's really interesting. So every single service gets its own IP address?
I believe so, yeah.
That's really interesting because, by the way, the system extension in Talos doesn't work like that. You get a single IP address for the host where Talos is running. And then if you expose a service, you need to expose a port. You need to set the port. And then you go to that, to the host's private IP address, Tailscale IP address, and then you use the service's port. But this is really cool. Every service gets its own IP address. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and here are the details. It has an IP address. Basically, all the Tailscale IPs are 100 something. All kinds of details that I've never really looked at. The important bit is this hostname. So now, Tailscale, apart from setting up the VPN for you, it has a feature called Magic DNS, and basically it creates hostnames for the machines on your Tailscale network, and you can just use these hostnames on all those devices as long as you have the Magic DNS option enabled.
You have machine details, addresses on the right-hand side, top. There you go. Have the short domain. That's the one that we'll be using, and the full domain. But again, both of those will only work in your tailnet. And that's like the full one, which contains the tailnet domain. So it's the short domain that we'll be using here because you have Magic DNS, and this host that you're on, it's on the same tailnet.
Now that I have all those details here, I can grab this host name and just put it here. And there it is. This is the management UI of RabbitMQ inside my Kubernetes cluster, inside my Docker, inside my VM, inside my MacBook. And I can just
crazy.
Log in. And there it is. This port number has nothing to do with Tailscale. That's just the management UI default port for RabbitMQ. Yeah, so that's basically it. Like I have a few additional options to show, but honestly, that's basically that. That's it. Like that's my use case.
Let me try and connect to it. Do you want to share it with me? See if that works?
Let's try that.
Let's try that.
If we go here, I guess we can do this. Generate and copy and invite link.
And guest. I'm logging in now. Again, you have to trust me. And let's see if I remember how you do this. So let's go to exchanges. Let's add a new exchange. Let's do this. Michal Kuratczyk and direct add exchange. Cool. So if you go to the exchanges, you see it. Great. So I was able to create the exchange. There you go. That's the one. So it definitely works.
That's unbelievable.
That's how you know it works.
This is a feature I've never used before, but yeah, if you are working as a team together, like let's say you're developing a microservice and you want to test it against somebody else's microservice or something like that, and obviously, ultimately, you should probably deploy that somewhere, and hopefully you have some CI to test that it works together. But if you want to just quickly expose your thing to somebody else, you can do that like that. There are also commands such as Tailscale serve and Tailscale something else. I don't remember right now. But basically, you can expose like a file on your devices or a folder, and just give a link to someone, and that person will be able to like download the files. So let's say like some large log files were produced, or you have some kind of like with Rabbit, like sometimes when I talk to someone, I want to share a file with data which is corrupted in some way or something like that, and this file can be like half a gig, and there's always this question like, how do you share a file like that? And with Tailscale, you can just expose a folder, give a link, and they can download that from your machine.
Now, before we look into more Tailscale options, I'm very curious about something. Is this the last RabbitMQ miner 313?
That's what we said on the blog.
Are we ready to upgrade?
Yes.
All right. Okay, great. Blog.
There's
which blog? Show me. Or show us, shall I say. Correction, show us.
So if we go, first of all, we have a new website. I don't know if you've seen that. With the dark mode.
Okay, I like it.
Awesome.
I love that tagline. One broker to queue them all.
To be honest, I have not seen that.
Whoever came up with that, I like it. I like it very much. Okay.
Right. And if you go to 314, it's here. And that's what we say.
I think I know that guy.
Yeah,
who's that guy? Cool. Okay, 313 is here.
I still use this photo a lot. I like it.
How long ago was that, by the way? Because I don't see any difference. How many?
2012.
2012. So that's 12 years ago. All right. What's your secret to not aging?
I don't think.
Share it with us.
I'm certainly bolder now. But yeah, it's a picture that was taken by surprise on a platform at the train station in Doncaster. I was just waiting on for a train with a colleague, and he took a photo of me, and I just really liked it.
Nice. Okay.
All right. So one more thing I wanted to actually, there are probably two things I want to show. So one is an alternative way of exposing a service. So right now I added an annotation to a service that existed, which is probably the most convenient option if you can do that. But I can imagine scenarios where, for whatever reason, you cannot add an annotation that's to the service that already exists. Like, it's not you who created it, you don't really own it, it can be overwritten by some CI, anything like that. Just modifying manually a service is not necessarily an option. So another way, if we do get YAML service, blah, 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 we get the details of the current service. We delete all the stuff that shouldn't be here when we create stuff like that. It has this annotation, so we definitely want to delete that. But basically, we can delete almost everything here. I guess this and this and this. That's pretty much what we need. Now, the trick is we set the type to load balancer and the load balancer class to Tailscale. And I will change the name of this service, something like that. And that's pretty much it. I apply this to create a service like that. And okay, there it is. And if I access that, that also works.
Nice. Okay. That's really cool. Okay, so you can either annotate the existing service, or you can create a new service of type load balancer, and the load balancer class is Tailscale. That's very cool.
Now that we did all the magic with sharing so that you could access something on my laptop, I guess that's not so impressive anymore. Okay. So right now I have the Tailscale installed on my phone already, but I deleted it from the machines on my Tailscale network. So when I turn it on, it might ask me to log in. Yeah. Okay, connect. Cool. We can see the iPhone 12 mini as a new machine here.
Yep.
And now, if I go here and I do HTTP default RQ, there it is.
Wow. No way. That's really cool.
The UI is not really optimized for mobile.
Mm-hmm.
It is there.
Mm-hmm.
And
look at that.
We can see our exchange.
Very nice.
Not very well, but it is here. Cool.
Yeah, it is there. Definitely works. Nice. So this is where we're saying that any device would work. And by the way, I just noticed something. I noticed the name for your tailnet. That's a really cool one. How did you get that really cool tailnet?
I don't know what you're talking about, to be honest.
Okay, so if you go back to where the machines were in your Tailscale, and if you were looking at the details, do you see the full domain? Tail 3 D da, exactly, like da. That's a really cool
name.
tail that they. I know, but it's a really cool random name. Cool. And by the way, same thing.
Cool.
I'm able to access it from any. That's really cool. When you share it with anyone, that person can access it from any machine that is on that's using Tailscale.
Yes, within reason. The way you said it sounds like a major security risk. But remember, this is like only on my VPN network. Everything is end-to-end encrypted. I explicitly share that with you. And then on top of that, there are ACLs that you could use to control. I've never used them. But there is a bunch of options where you can say like who can access that, and I guess from which devices, from which IPs. I don't know exactly what's possible, but yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, so how would you like to follow up with this? Like, what do we do next time?
You mean not about Tailscale, or?
No.
Okay,
no, still Tailscale. Like, how do we add on? How do we add on top of this?
So one thing that I consider playing with is a router inside your Kubernetes cluster that gives you access to everything in that cluster. At least that's my understanding. I've never done that yet. So potentially, maybe it will be convenient. So if I, for example, I said that I run all kinds of tests in my GKE cluster. Sometimes there's like, I don't know, a dozen Rabbit clusters running in parallel. And every now and then I would like to access the management UI, for example, of one of them, or maybe two of them. And yeah, right now I would need to expose each of them explicitly one by one. With that option, I could probably grab an IP address of a given pod service, I'm not sure, and just access it as if that IP from a GKE cluster was on my network. So that's something I want to try at some point, whether that's more convenient or not. But following the docs was actually, for the first time, I wanted to do something with Tailscale, and I wasn't sure how to do that.
I'm wondering if you tried upgrading the operator. Like, any issues when you try upgrading the operator?
I have not explicitly done that really. The way this manifest that I grabbed is configured, it uses the unstable tag. So every time I deploy it, or potentially even every time I restart it, it will fetch the latest version. And I've never checked whether it actually pulled the latest version or not, but I've never had any issues.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, if you delete the operator, will you still be able to access the services?
Well, I'm pretty sure
that will be possible.
So right now, if we look at the Tailscale namespace, there are two services. So two pods. For each of the services I exposed, there is a dedicated pod that does some magic. And I guess this will disappear when I delete the operator.
Can we try it?
Sure.
I'm really curious to see what happens, because if that means that in every pod, there must be a tailnet daemon. Sorry, a Tailscale daemon. I think it's tail D or whatever it's called, Tailscale D. And that's what gives one IP per service. That's why every service basically appears on your tailnet as a new machine. But if you delete the operator, maybe, just maybe.
I guess if I just delete the operator using the same manifest file, it will delete the whole namespace. So that would destroy everything. I can try to delete the operator deployment.
Yeah, that's right.
But then I would expect everything to keep working. So if
yeah, that's right. So that's really cool because that means that you can upgrade the operator and not affect any of the running machines, right? Running pods. So that will still continue working.
I guess. So these pods are still there. And if I refresh, yeah, so it still works.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so the operator is not tied. That's very cool. I'm assuming it would be similar to the RabbitMQ operator, right? Deleting the operator doesn't affect the clusters.
As long as you don't delete the CRD.
Will still be around. Exactly, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I'm assuming the same approach was used here because you still have the machines running. That's really cool. That's really cool. Okay. Exit nodes. So let's talk about that. So you mentioned the subnet router. If you enjoyed this free video, you can watch the full version at makeitwork.gerhard.io. You can also listen to the entire conversation at pod.gerhard.io. See you in the next one.